Let's diagnose a car using ChatGPT. Yeah, you heard that right. Let's use ChatGPT, an artificial intelligence tool, to diagnose this 2023 Chevy Trax RS with a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder turbocharged engine. You heard that right. This is a one of those rare type of engines, but it's meant for fuel economy and affordability of the vehicle. So right here, it is a car that's been owned by a family member of mine. It's got 73,000 miles. Check engine light came on. And while I'm not very familiar with this type of engine or this type of vehicle in general, we're going to use the help of artificial intelligence to help us diagnose along the process of what is exactly going on with this car. Now, if you watch my previous video before where I used ChatGPT to help me diagnose the problem on a 2011 Toyota Prius, then you know that I talked a little bit about as to why I wouldn't recommend somebody going along that route. Now, this is for most of you DIYers out there that are just getting your hands and your feet wet. Aside from just turning wrenches, when you want to start getting into diagnostics, this is a good tool to use. But today I'll be combining my experience in the automotive field of 15 plus years as an automotive repair technician, not exactly for Chevy, but mostly Toyota and Lexus combined. And then what I will do is I'll put my final thoughts together onto what I believe is wrong with this vehicle. So why don't we get started? All right, so now that my scan tool is plugged in, this is the ThinkCar 662. If you want to watch a full in-depth review of this scan tool, go ahead and check out the rusted nut. I'll leave the screenshot right here on the screen. He's also a content creator like myself and actually provides good car repair videos. So want to check out his channel, go right ahead. We do love for you to support small content creators like myself. Now let's get started here. I usually like to do the VIN option. And what that'll do is just it'll scan the vehicle's VIN number and it'll auto-populate the make, model, and the year. And then you'll have to select whatever options it'll tell you. Let's see. All right, so again, I haven't had this car here. I haven't scanned it before, so it doesn't see the actual software for GM. So it's telling me it cannot find the software for GM, and I'll have to download it. So let's start downloading that. Okay, now that it's downloaded, it's actually installing.
A few minutes later.
By the way, one of the great things about this scan tool is it actually has lifetime update. So what you just saw right now, I'll be able to do that 3, 4, 5 years from now, as long as I still keep having the scan tool. That is awesome. All right, so let's do manually select the VIN. Let's do automatically search. All right, so we can see it detected the information from the vehicle. It says model year 2024, and I did say on the video it was a 2023, but that's because I remember we purchased this car in the year of 2023, but it was a 2024 model year. So that is correct on that, and I was wrong on that, so I apologize. So now let's do a health report. P0299. Let's see what that is. Transmission type. I don't know what transmission type this is. M&H. Well, let's look at the tire placard and see if it'll tell us. All right, so looking here at the tire placard, it doesn't say the transmission type, but I wanted to point this out to you. You see this? This says the day of manufacture was March of 2023. I remember specifically picking up this vehicle at the dealership in June of 2023. So how is a 2024 model? I remember back when I first started working at, this is back in the mid 2000s when I started working at dealerships. You could buy a future model year, but only when it came to like September. So in September, say for example, in September of 2025, you could buy a 2026 model year, but not as early as March of that. That's interesting. All right, so I looked under the hood, I looked on the passenger side, I tried to look for the owner's manual, but I can't find anything that'll tell me whether this transmission is an MNH code or MNK. So in my honest opinion, I don't think it'll really matter related to the code that we have now, which is an engine code. So we're just going to select either one of these two and continue moving forward. All right, so again, we got that code, right? So let's see what we got going on here. Usually every DTC will give us a freeze frame data. This is a snapshot that it takes of what the conditions were when this code was triggered on. So let's see what pops up in here. Okay, so we can see that 185 degrees, that's operating temperature. We can see the long and short-term fuel trims, fuel pressure sensor, engine speed, vehicle speed. So I was traveling at about 65 miles per hour. So the last time there was an engine code in this car, it was 9,700 miles ago. Warm up. So you can see there's a lot of information here that it'll tell you related to your code. So with this engine code P0299, I don't really have much knowledge of what this code could be in this particular engine. If I wanted to proceed with what I know from experience, I will pop the hood and take a look around the turbocharger area and make sure that there's no boost leaks, make sure that everything's connected, make sure that just perform a visual inspection overall the entire engine system, especially focusing more on the turbo area. Remember, a turbocharger consists of a turbocharged itself, the valve, the vacuum valve that opens up the wastegate itself, the pipes that connect to the turbo, the intercooler. So all that stuff is connected. If it senses that there's no pressure or excessive pressure, then it'll trigger a code. This code right here, what it's telling us is under boost. So it's losing boost. If I make sense out of that, I'm thinking I have a leak somewhere, or I am probably opening the wastegate sooner than normal. So that's what I would do if I didn't have AI resources. But with AI resources, let's go ahead and get to the part of this video where it makes it fun. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say. All right, so here it gets to the part where I talked about earlier. As a tech, if you didn't have information as to if this is a common failure or a TSB, and let's just say it's not covered under warranty, what would you do? So this is the part where it says right here, number 5, what I would do diagnostically as a tech. So given your exact setup, high probability cause based on TSB and the platform, so and the engine that it has, the wastegate linkage wear / play. And it says turbo not meeting commanded boost. So I kind of already told you that earlier, where it's not getting, when it says under boost, it's not getting the sufficient amount of boost that it needs in order to get that engine going as optimized as possible. So the fact that the manufacturer is replacing that, I don't think that the wastegate is something that could detach from the turbo itself. I think it's like it comes as a whole assembly. And this is just me guessing. I'm not entirely sure. Now, as to the actuator test, there may be an option to do that via the scan tool. It says right here, commanded versus actual boot scan tool. These are quick checks that you could do. Wastegate actuator test bidirectional, visual 4. So to check visually for play in the rod, and you want to check for rattle at cold startup. Also tells you smoke test, rule out leaks, but less likely on a 2024. If underboost is consistent, skip chasing small leaks early. This platform turns towards a turbo mechanical fault. So bottom line, there's a relevant GM TSB, relevant, but not exactly for this particular vehicle, with the same engine, same code, and this is becoming a known issue, especially for turbo wastegate related DTCs. Very likely covered under warranty, especially original owner since 2024. So practical advice, send it to the dealer with a freeze frame, code, history. Yeah, it's telling me to tell it its mileage, and it'll let you know whether the DTC is under current or history, and what kind of drivability concerns I'm experiencing, and it'll help me determine whether, I guess, if it's covered or not. But I think we already know the answer to that. So I'm gonna tell it that it has 73,004. Let's just say 15 miles. And by the time, if we do end up taking it to a dealership, it might have a little bit more miles. This code is current, and any noise or drivability symptoms. No noise, no drivability symptoms. So now let's see what it says. So here's what it says. The fact that you have none of those at 73,000 miles is a big clue. This is more likely a marginal threshold under boost condition, not a failure. Most likely causes in your case rank slight boost leak, small leak ECMCs under boost, driver feels nothing, common points, and we already talked about that. So here's what it says. At 73,000 miles, you're outside of the 5-year, 60,000 miles. So turbo replacement, likely customer pay. That is not good, as this is a not even a 3-year-old car and already needs a turbo. So I think we have enough. Let's give it a quick visual inspection and see if we find anything. I did notice that there's a shield around the turbo, so I don't think we could be able to see anything, but we never know. All right, so this is the engine. Very, very tiny engine, 3-cylinder, turbocharged. And the turbo is back here. And this is where I just mentioned where it has a shield. You can't really see much in there. Now, the turbo itself, the turbocharger, is down on this side. And yeah, we could barely see anything on there. But I am going to start the car up and see if I hear something. I don't think that I can, or who knows. Let's start it up and see what happens. I'm going to have them. All right, so I have someone in the driver's seat, and they're going to accelerate, and I'm going to see if I can hear anything, any boost leaks. Yeah, I don't hear anything. Okay, we're going to shut it off. All right, so here we are with my scan tool, and I am at a section where I could do, here, let me show you, actuation test. And these are the different actuation tests that I could do. I could test the auto start stop. And you can see here, just to give you an example, I can actually start the car from here or initiate the starter from here. I'm not familiar with this vehicle, so I don't know what I will do, but let's just try. Oh, it says that the front hood is open. Hang on one second. Okay, so the hood is closed. Let's see what it'll do. Stop. And there it is. The car stopped. Should we start it? Started. And there it is. See, these are the type of tests that you could do via if you have a bidirectional scan tool. So let's just, I just want to show you an example. Let's go ahead and try wastegate, what we have going on for wastegate. Turbocharger. So we have turbocharger, bypass solenoid valve. We want to do wastegate. Okay, the engine's idling. I'm assuming it needs to be off. That's why I had it off, but please control decrease, increase. Let's see what this does. All right, so every time I try to run the wastegate test, it'll tell me that the ignition is not on, and then I turn the entire vehicle on. You can see here the engine's running, and obviously everything gets blurred out or even disappears. So, which leads me to believe that this test is not either, this tool doesn't support it, like it actually gives you the option, but it's not able to do it, or I'm just not meeting the right criterias right now. I'm not entirely sure why it's not coming on or why it's not available. Let's try the bypass solenoid valve. Ooh, I can hear something clicking. Off, on, off. So that bypass solenoid valve is actually working because I can hear it turn on and off. And we don't have a code for that. But when it comes to the wastegate, if the wastegate is commanded electronically, that may or may not be the failure right there. Maybe an electronic wastegate that is not operating correctly because it just failed. But as I'm trying, you can see here, these are the names of the parameters. Turbo wastegate solenoid valve and turbocharger wastegate solenoid. These are all things that I could operate or actuate via bidirectional, but I can't. Right now it's telling me device limits exceeded, incorrect power mode, check ignition switch. My ignition switch is on. I don't know why it keeps giving me that message, but I'm just going to give up for now on this. All right, everyone, that is pretty much it. As you can see, AI will basically will lay out the steps that you have to take in order to get this car diagnosed. if we were kind of clueless as to where to get started, you could actually tell it that and you could say, hey, this is the code I have. What should I start checking? And it'll tell you exactly what to do. So you're going to have a variety of tools and time and patience to get in there, and perhaps access to the repair manual if you don't know how to take something apart. Because when it comes to something like a turbocharger, which is not an everyday typical thing that you replace, you're more than likely going to encounter that you have a lot of accessories, parts, and stuff in the way. So if that's what you want to do, that's up to you. I basically will leave it right at that point. And that is because this is my mother-in-law's car. She's had it since new. She's had a service at the dealership since new. And we're going to see what kind of options they have to offer if GM does treat their customers fairly. Perhaps there are some options there, whether she's out of warranty, there's something that they could do, whether they want to. I've seen scenarios where they go half and half with the parts and labor, or half on the total bill, or I don't know. We'll see what has to happen. Point of the matter is that I'm not here to take things apart just yet. And that is because I don't want to leave any marks, leave any proof that there's somebody that's been on there, because a lot of the times the technician that's working on the vehicle will tell their service manager, hey, I believe that somebody was working or tampering with whatever part that has a failure, and then they could lean that way, and eventually the claim, or the, let's just call it the fail part, will be determined as to somebody else touched it, therefore it failed. I don't know. I'm just saying, perhaps that's a possibility. But at this point, I did simple checks, just like, checking your air filter, make sure it's not clogged up or restricted. Visual inspection of the intercooler right through the front of the bumper, make sure there's no punctures, nothing, a rock or a pebble has hit it and it's causing a boost leak. And you did see me earlier having someone accelerate the car and noticing if there was a boost deficiency, because when you have a boost leak, believe me, you would know when there's a boost leak. So what we're gonna do now is I leave the DTC just how it is right now. I didn't clear, I didn't do anything. I try to demonstrate the active test for the wastegate valve, but it's not working. I don't know why that is. So we're just gonna leave it as is. We're gonna take it to the dealership. We're gonna pay whatever diagnostic fee they ask us to pay, and then we'll take it on from there and see what happens. But if this is your vehicle and you're watching this video now, and this is years later on, this is a good example of how you should start. First, get a device, a scan tool, preferably a bidirectional tool that could perform active tests. One that you perhaps make sure before you get your hands on that it could do bidirectional tests for this specific vehicle right here. I don't know if the one that I have is equipped to do that, but point of the matter is that you want to retrieve that code to get as much information as possible. You already know that this particular engine does have issues with that turbo assembly, and perhaps the wastegate is the one. And when it comes to the wastegate, that is actually a part that you can't service it because it's built right into the turbocharger itself. However, the wastegate actuator valve, the one that opens and closes that door of the wastegate, that is operated either electronically or vacuum operated, as it was in previous or older vehicles. Still to this day, some manufacturers still use vacuum operated wastegates. And that may or may not be our issue here, where it's actually the ECM is commanded to open and close it, but it's not actually doing anything. Maybe that's why the actuator test wasn't working. But again, we're just gonna leave it there. So you saw it for yourself. ChatGPT can help us, guide us as to what it is that we should do, or take the appropriate steps that we should take in order to figure out what is wrong with a check engine light that is providing you with a DTC. In this situation will be P0299, engine under boost. Now, if you're watching this video sometime in the future and your vehicle is completely out of warranty by years and mileage, and you want to take it completely for yourself and diagnose it, the one thing I would do is I would take that shield off, that turbo assembly, and have someone else operate that wastegate via the active test with your bidirectional scan tool and see what it does. See if you can see it opening and closing. I also would check, make sure that's not flapping around, that hasn't become loose, because there is a rod that opens and closes that door. It's not getting seized up. Just visual inspection, something that I'm not doing, because you already know I'm taking it to a dealership. So as you know, AI could point us in the right direction, but you also need experience. You also need knowledge and common sense as to what exactly to do, and perhaps not necessarily take things apart that you shouldn't be taken apart. So if you feel like you took advantage from this video and it is helping you and it's pointing you to the right direction of where to actually start with one of these, let me know in the comments below. But make sure you give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't. Also, let me know if you like this type of videos where I do get some type of check engine light, ABS, airbag light, and I take diagnosis steps via AI, as it seems to know almost everything. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for educating yourself, making progress, and best to you.